Welcome everybody to Nancy Campbell Academy's webinar series. My name is Tahirih Naylor and I'm going to be presenting this evening on the importance of attachment for adolescents. We're hopeful that this series will be helpful to parents in becoming closer to and assisting their teenagers to become full, capable individuals that are contributing to society and of service to the world. So I'll begin with this quote, which is by the founder of the Head Start program. It says, "Every child needs at least one adult who is irrationally crazy about him or her." More than 60 years of attachment research has demonstrated that what every child needs is at least one strong, caring adult to attach to. So tonight we're going to be speaking about what that attachment looks like for teenagers. I think we're all very familiar with the concept of baby bonding or attachment for babies and young children. But what we often forget is that this idea of attachment is critical all throughout our entire lives. And especially during turbulent times of a lot of development, which we know that teenagers and adolescents are going through. So science is discovering more and more the powerful role that attachment plays in our lives. The psychological term of attachment is actually just a fancy word for love. It represents and speaks to that special bond between a child and her parent or caregiver. So if you look in the psychological textbooks, you'll see this term attachment over and over, but they never speak of it just as love. And in fact, when we say the word love, it becomes a lot more intuitive. It makes sense to us. We know that we have to love our children. We know that they do the best when they feel love and care from us. So I'll say attachment because that's kind of the term for it, but just think to yourself that what we're speaking about is simply love. Slide doesn't want, there we go. So let's begin by talking about what makes a child easy to parent. Normally, if we were all together in a room, I could ask for some volunteers here about when is your child easy to parent? When do you think, oh, I've got this parenting thing down, it's not so bad? Many of us would probably say that it's when our children listen to us, when they listen to what we say, when they take our cues. So when we don't have to throw a big fit for them to do what we want them to, when they can kind of tell by the look in our eyes or a raised eyebrow or whatever that we need them to come here or to get something done. And of course that they respond quickly and easily to those cues. That they trust us. Of course, we can't get very far in raising our children and helping to guide them in life if they don't trust our judgment and our input into their lives. They look up to us, so they see us as someone they want to come to for guidance and advice. They seek our help when they need it, so they don't go to others, but in fact come to us, their parents. They like our company, so we actually enjoy spending time together. We want to be in each other's company. We're not, running away from each other or constantly fighting every time we come in contact. They don't want to have secrets from us. And more than that, they come to us to confide in us. All these things we know make children easy to parent, because if they're coming to confide in us, then we know what to help them with, what they're struggling with, and how we can help them move forward. They seek to measure up. So they have an idea of what we want from them, and they try to achieve that. They like to please us. They like us. They follow us, and they feel at home with us. So all of these characteristics, which we might say make a child easy to parent, are also characteristics of a well-attached child. When a child is oriented to us, is looking up to us, feels at home with us, we know that our relationship is strong. We know that we are the people that they're coming to when they need something. And we want that because, of course, we feel that we have their best interests in mind and can guide them and help them grow. So just briefly, let's look at what attachment is. It's defined by Dr. Neufeld as that drive or relationship characterized by the pursuit and preservation of proximity. So if you think about a young child, we now know from all this attachment research, the ability to examine the brain and all these drives that make us human, that desire to be close to somebody, to feel love and to be in relationship with somebody is a fundamental instinct. If you can think about let's say there was a natural disaster and, huge earthquake, and your home falls apart, and you're all on your own and you're looking around, and what's the first thing that you want to know? For most of us, we wouldn't be thinking about food or water or shelter, even though that would probably be more fundamental to our survival. The first thing that we would want to know is where our loved ones are, where our children are, where our spouse is, where our family is. So we know that this drive, this desire to be close to those who care for us is so fundamental. And we know too that when a child is deprived of that, we see extremely negative results of it. So I'll get to it in a minute, but there's horrendous studies from large-scale orphanages. For example, in Romania from years ago, there used to be hundreds of children together in an orphanage being cared for by only a few adults. One early study found that there was a death rate of 1 out of 3 of those children. Half of those who survived had mental illness. But the question is, how could just simply being in an orphanage kill a baby? Their physical needs were met. Their diapers were changed, their clothes were changed, they were fed, but they weren't held, they weren't loved. And we know that touch, that feeling, that look of love in a caregiver's eyes actually stimulates the production of the growth hormone in a child's body. It stimulates oxytocin and all these amazing hormones that allow us to grow and be healthy. Can people mute their microphones, because we're hearing a little bit of background noise? I think I can mute people if you're having trouble with that. So how does our attachment empower us? What does it give us the power to do? So the first interesting thing about attachment is that it arranges hierarchically. So it gives us, we kind of talk about this as being a caring alpha. So the idea is that when you're in, when somebody's in right relationship with you as your child, you have to have the lead. You have to have a strong lead. You have to be able to care for them, take care of them, and they feel comfortable and safe as you do that. So that allows us, sorry, every time I do this, that allows us to take charge of them, to take care of them, and to act with natural authority. It also renders endearing and tolerant. I'm not sure if any of you have had the experience of changing a baby's poopy diaper that isn't your own baby. All of a sudden, the poop, like it's amazing. You can change your own child's diaper and not, blink. It's totally fine. You don't even notice it. And if you change the diaper of a child that you don't know or you're not attached to, all of a sudden it's really gross. You don't really want to get too close to that. So all of these, love allows us to care for things and go through things and deal with things that without that love there is so much more difficult. So it allows us to like them and endure them. And this becomes particularly important when they become teenagers. Different habits, different opinions, different ideas from what we have. So that relationship needs to be strong to carry us through these times as they're transitioning into adulthood. It also creates a sense of home, as we talked about, and allows us to provide comfort, rest, and a place of retreat. And it facilitates dependence. That dependence is something in North America that we don't like to talk about too much. In fact, we're kind of obsessed with making our children independent. But the research shows that the more a child is able to rest in the comfort of their parents and know that they're loved and cared for, the more capable and independent they are in the rest of their lives. So for example, there's studies of 2-year-olds who asked to be picked up by their parents. And the parents who picked up their children and carried them, those kids quickly became interested in walking. But the parents who said, no, you have to walk on your own, the child became obsessed with being picked up. So the more we can allow our children to rest and be at home with us, the more they feel confident and capable to go out of that nest, so to speak, to be able to live their lives. It also creates a compass point, in these days, and I think especially with teenagers, where there's so much influence from the media, there's so much influence from their peers, that it can be confusing. Where do they turn? Where do they get their values from? Who do they look to for information about what they should do in each situation? We want them to come to us. We have years more experience than their peers. We have more brain development. A child's brain doesn't stop developing until they're 26. So we don't want them asking their 15-year-old friend what they should do. We want them coming to us. And in order for them to come to us, they need to feel that they have a good relationship with us. It activates their proximity instincts so they come to us, and it invokes a desire to be good for those that they're attached to. It allows us to act with natural power and authority so that we don't have to lord over them. We can just respond to them and guide and lead them in a very natural way. So when children develop this healthy bond and this relationship with those they love, they grow. It's very simple. The love we show to our children, in the Baha'i writings, there's some beautiful quotes about how we're like gardeners of tender plants. And that doesn't stop when they're teenagers. It's even more of an important job as they get older, because they're more out in the outside world. They need more guidance and information from us. So the love we show to our children is like the sun, and they are like the tender plants. Our love and care for them allows to grow deep roots of attachment. And these roots are necessary for them to grow and emerge as capable human beings. So it's interesting if you think about learning to garden, and I moved into this house with a rather large garden, so I'm on a steep learning curve here. But what I understand is you can fertilize a flowering plant, for example, and encourage it to flower very quickly. You can get those beautiful flowers to come out. But that is sort of a rookie gardener mistake. For what I understand, you want to be able to encourage the roots to go deep. The deeper the roots of a plant are, the longer it will last and the more beautiful flowers we'll see. So what we're going to talk a little bit about today are the roots of attachment, how we can encourage those roots to go deep so that as we get to the teenage years, that child is ready to really bloom and flourish and has strong, strong roots in place. So Dr. Can somebody mute themselves? Sorry. Is anybody else doing that?
I think you may be able to mute them.
I might be able to mute them. Oh, it seems like it stopped.
方法3，点击设置，点击智能辅助。
Okay, I have to get out of this, I think, to mute them.
智能截屏开关打开，在需要录制界面，用双击点击。
Okay.
Great.
Is that better?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
So,
sorry, I just have to get back.
You can mute people, right?
Yeah, she has that.
Yeah, I think I muted everybody. Okay. So what we just want to quickly go over here a little bit are the roots of attachment. So how we can really encourage these lovely tender plants that are our children to have deep roots of attachment with us, so that when the tempests and storms of the teenage years come, they know who to turn to. One way to think about attachment is to think about it as the womb that continues after they're born. So we know when they're in our bellies, you know, they're safe and sound. Then when they're young children, they're very close to us and around us. And, you know, many parents now are wondering, why has bullying gotten so bad? Why is this idea of helicopter parenting really taken off? And what we want to think about is that our relationship with our children protects them when they're not with us. It's the womb that they can walk around in, so to speak. There's a lovely story that Dr. Neufeld tells about his young son who was about 6 or 7 years old, and they went to a soccer field he was going to play soccer that night, but there was a playground nearby. So Dr. Neufeld was speaking with some parents, and his young son ran off to go play in the playground. And while he was playing there, a few older boys came and kind of pushed him on the ground. So Dr. Neufeld goes running over to go rescue his son. And the boys were calling him bad names. And his little son sort of stands up and puts his hands on his hips and looks up at them and says, "You can't call me that. My daddy thinks I'm a good soccer player." So the idea there is that no matter what others say to our children, no matter what difficulties they may experience, when they have a strong sense of who they come home to, of how much love we have for them, of who they are and how they can confide in us, then they can deal with all the difficulties that come. But when they don't feel like they have that security, when they don't feel like they know who they are and who they come from, then it's very difficult for them to handle bullying or to handle, you know, any of the difficulties, all the influences of the media and materialism and all these things that they're facing. So we want to be that strong force for them. And we want to be able to pass on what's right and wrong. You know, sometimes there's even a fear now of teaching our children what's right and wrong, but they need to know these things. And we're the ones that can teach them that in a loving, kind way, so that when they're teenagers, they have that as their guide. So these are the 6 roots of attachment. I just want to show you this image so you can see these roots going deeper and deeper. And we'll go briefly over them and just give some examples. And then you'll see that from these roots, there's this, you know, these arrows, these green arrows coming up. And the idea there is that that's the flowering plant that comes up with emergence and adaptation. They're able to be who they are, to contribute to the world, they know they have such a strong sense of self that they aren't going to be lost when they come up with peers or media or things like that, because they have these deep roots of attachment. So the very first one is really sweet. It's the idea just of connection and closeness through the senses. So in the first year of life, the only way the babies can hold their parents close is through touch, sight, hearing, smelling, and tasting. And we all know babies can't bear to be apart from their primary, you know, caregiver for very long before they need to be back with us. And this doesn't stop as children grow older. They still need our physical touch. They still need to be, you know, looked at with love and caring in their eyes. They still like to have the smell, you know, of their parents. My mom passed away 2 years ago, and I just kept looking at her hands as she was, you know, towards the end. Those hands held and cared for me, you know, for so many years, and I'm like 40 years old now, you know. So this doesn't end. This attachment to the physical of our caregivers. There was a sweet story that somebody told, who came to one of my friends' workshops. She said she had a 16-year-old son who was goth. So he has, like, you know, black makeup and the heavy chains and you know, really into a lot of things she wasn't into and didn't understand. And after attending one of these workshops and learning more about attachment and relationship, she said she went home and she sat down next to him on the couch and she cuddled him. And he kind of let her. She sort of tickled him a little and put her arm around him and said, "Oh, my sweet little Gothy, you know, I miss those days when you were a baby." And, you know, just cuddled him up for a couple minutes. And she said it was really hard and really awkward. And then, you know, they said goodnight and she went upstairs. And she said she hadn't put him to sleep, you know, or checked on him at night for years. Like, it just wasn't, they hadn't had real conversations or relationship for a long time. And she said that night as she was walking by his room, she heard, "Mom, will you come tuck me in?" So her little Gothy really needed, you know, some more love. So even though they're in these big bodies and they don't seem, you know, as cuddly as they used to, they still need that relationship. So in the second year of life, we start to see that our toddler wants to be like us, like they imitate us. I have an almost 2-year-old right now, and she just wants to put on my makeup all the time. She's constantly pretending to talk on the phone. She wants to sit on my lap while we eat. You know, all of it is imitating. And of course, we know that babies learn even language through their attachment and relationship with us. So much is learned through this love. As we get older and as children get older and even through the teen years, the way we work on this root of attachment is through shared activities, noticing similarities between you and the child. You know, "Oh, you have my eyes," or, "Oh, I noticed you like to play basketball. I really like playing basketball." When they're having tough times, we can share stories of difficulty that we've gone through that's similar to what they have. We can communicate with empathy with them and share their experience. So these roots don't, you know, they don't go away. They're still ways for us to connect. The third one is belonging. So as around 3 years old, we start to see children understand a concept of being in this family, that you're my mommy and you're my daddy and these are my brothers or my sisters. So this idea of belonging and loyalty emerges. We also start to see a lot of jealousy and possessiveness come out because all of a sudden they understand what's theirs and they want it to be theirs. So we still want to speak even as children get older and help them feel that they belong with us. So we try to make things work for them, we defend them, we welcome their thoughts and feelings, we come alongside them when they're having a problem. We let them know that we'll always be there for them, that they're our, daughter, our son, no one could take them away from us. All of these things communicate that they belong to us and are close to us. So these first three roots that we just spoke about, the sameness and senseness and senses, belonging and loyalty, they're quite shallow. They don't go very deep. And if the attachment stops there, then we have a real problem, because the child can only be with us when they're actually, the child can only feel close to us when they're actually with us. So they have to be physically close to us, have our same ideas, have our same, thoughts and opinions. And that's the way that they attach. The problem is, of course, that children are meant to grow up and become their own people. So we want them to feel close to us, but also to have their own ideas and thoughts, right? We're not trying to create robots. We want them to be able to use their minds, the gifts God gave them, to be of service to the world in their own way. So what becomes challenging is how they can hold on to us, but still become their own people. And unless they develop these deeper roots, teenagers will constantly be seeking closeness, sameness, belonging, and loyalty, usually with their friends, instead of turning to their parents. So you see in gangs that, they're going to all wear the same kind of clothes. Like, that's the symbol, right? That you're all the same. That's only the second root of attachment. That's a very superficial way of attaching. They're going to talk the same. They're going to be into the same music. So it stays at this superficial level. And if we stay at that superficial level, we don't actually have a heart connection, a real relationship connection. So we want to go a little bit deeper than that. We want to have this heart connection. If development is going, in the way that it should, we'll see that by around 6 years old, a child should be attaching with all 6 roots. So we'll continue here a little bit. The 4th root is significance. The child feels that they are significant to you. It registers with them that we take delight in her very existence, that she's first in our lives, that we'll do anything for her, that we have high regard for her. And the way you convey this to your child, of course, is unique. But all of a sudden, there's this light in the 4-year-old's eye, like, oh, mommy loves me. Mommy thinks I'm special. I'm important in her life. And we want her to feel that. Then around 5 years of age, this wonderful process of your child actually falling in love with you. I don't know if many of you remember, but around 5, children will often start drawing lots of hearts. There'll be hearts and hearts, and there'll be, I love you, mummies, and there'll be pictures of you holding hands with her, and, and you get all of these beautiful papers, and it really is them giving you their heart. It's a very special, beautiful process where they're actually sharing with you their heart. It's when they fall in love with you. And the amazing thing about this is that once that love is deepened to that point, that even when you're not with them, they can still hold on to you. So it means that even if the relationship is severed for some reason, you notice around 5 years old, many of us sort of feel like, okay, we could go away for a couple of days, we could maybe go back to work, we could do some more things with our lives, and the children can handle it a little better, are a little bit stronger. And we show our love. Studies show that children feel our love through D-E-W. It's delight, enjoyment, and warmth. So when we show that delight and enjoyment and warmth in our eyes, then the child really knows that they're loved. And then the 6th and last root is understanding. This is a really important one. This is psychological intimacy, which helps the child feel that they can come to you, that they can share their secrets with you, that they want to share all of that with you. So those are the 6 roots of attachment. And these are things that, it kind of comes and goes. There will be times that we feel them so strongly with our children, and then there will be times where we feel like, okay, we need to work on these things a little more. And in the same way that we would work on our relationship with our spouse, we also need to work on our relationship with our children in this way. Because you can imagine how much easier it would be to parent your teenager if he or she wants to be like you, shares your values, feels drawn to confide in you and take counsel with you. So nature, God intends for these roots to grow and deepen as long as the parent takes responsibility for cultivating and nourishing these roots. So that really is our job, to continue working on that. In order to do that, we have to provide more than is asked for. This is a really interesting concept or principle. Dr. Neufeld says the provision must be greater than the pursuit. Sometimes, you know, when your children are young, you can feel like they're constantly after you. You know, they want your attention. They want to be with you. They want to be near you. And we have to trump that. We have to be the caring alpha that says, I can be everything you need. I am the answer for you. You know, I've got what you need here. So many of us now, I think, feel sort of tired at the end of the day. Okay, you know, keep yourself busy. I can't handle you right now. These are not the things we want to convey to them. We want to convey that we can handle all of it, especially when they're teenagers and they're exploring all these different ideas and concepts. When they're teenagers, all of a sudden they have idealism. Anything is possible. You know, they can see the world how it should be. And with that comes criticism of us, criticism of the world around us. So we want to be careful that we make space for them to express themselves and to be who they are, and that we're a safe place for them. So yeah, I said we want to be in this caring alpha position. Nancy's telling me I only have about 3 minutes left. So maybe I'll finish up with this. And then next week, I think the idea would be that we would get into a little bit of what happens when that attachment relationship isn't there with your teenager, how we can repair it, you know, what are the things we can do to really make sure that that relationship is going in the right direction. So maybe we'll just kind of close with this idea that, you know, teenage rebellion is not necessarily what has to happen. We do want our teenagers to become self-sufficient. We want them to have their own ideas, but they don't need to cast off all of our opinions and beliefs and values that they were raised in. So the idea is when a child is securely attached and has this space to develop as an individual, they can be their own person, hold on to themselves and their new ideas while also holding on to their parents and their families. So there's no need to lose oneself or one's relationship with their parents. We have to encourage them to be able to do both. And I'll just end with this. So that with this concept that in order to love our children and care for our children, we have to ensure that we're feeling filled up with love and kindness. We have to make sure that our hearts are soft because we're the provider of our child's attachment needs. And we have to be able to provide from them from a soft, caring, compassionate place. And there's a lovely writing from the Baha'i writings that says, "O God, my God, aid thou thy trusted servants to have loving and tender hearts." And that's something maybe that bears some reflection. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what it means to have a tender heart so that we can share that love with our children and be there for them as they're growing into their teenage years. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. I am fielding questions that are coming to me either by text message and some by email. So I'm going to, Taylor has chosen the 3 that have been sort of tie into most frequently asked, but so everyone knows, please do go ahead and send any more questions in. We'll make sure that they're each answered. And you'll get a question and answer sheet, as well as you'll get some slides, and you're going to get a copy of the video at 1.2. The slides will be a bit different, but they'll definitely convey what Tahirih has said this evening. So one of the questions that we have a couple families that have adopted children, and it's interesting because their challenges are obviously very similar because the questions that I'm getting are kind of similar. It says, my child is adopted and I cannot go back to what I wished happened when they were young. Can you attach later to a teen? And in a way that, what about if your teen doesn't seem receptive or doesn't show you any type of love? How does that work?
Wonderful question. So absolutely, attachment can grow at any age, at any stage. It's not something that, you know, you only have the opportunity for when they're babies. In fact, most of the reason that I studied this and provide trainings in it is for children who live in group homes and foster homes who've been removed from their parents. So I've been training the child and youth workers that work with them for the last couple of years. The stages are the same. And it's so interesting because if you see somebody who's experienced in working with kids, you'll see right away they'll come in and say, "Oh, you know, I really like that red shirt you're wearing. I have a red shirt at home that I like to wear." Or they'll find out what that child likes and begin to build on those likenesses. The thing that often happens though with children who've been removed from their parents or moved around or been in foster homes or been adopted is that they have a lot of defenses up. You know, it requires, in order to love somebody, we have to feel vulnerability. And we don't want to be vulnerable if our hearts have been hurt too many times. So we talk about it, and next week I'll get into it a lot more, how we soften the hearts of our teenagers, how we lower those defenses so that they can feel love and kindness and care. There's a beautiful story that one of the facilitators from Newfield tells. She was a counselor in a high school. And there was a child there who just had moved around from all kinds of foster homes, was constantly causing trouble in the school. And this counselor was kind of at a loss of what to do. The girl wouldn't speak to her, but everybody wanted her to speak to her. And she said all she could do was make her office a safe haven for that child. So she got her favorite tea. She would bring her favorite snacks. She would just let her cuddle up on the couch and rest if she needed to. She just very slowly cared for her in these early shallow roots is how she began. And she said one day after doing this for like 6 or 8 months, and she thought, I'm making no progress. Like all I'm doing is serving this kid tea and snacks. Like we're not getting anywhere psychologically. She said, finally the child came to her and just burst into tears and let out all these tears about, I think her pet had died. It didn't really matter what the tears were about. The point was that she saw her as a safe place to lower her defenses and to open her heart to her. So it can take a very long time, and we speak about it as walking the maze. So it's a precious, precious thing to be able to be the answer to a child who hasn't had somebody steady in their lives. So hopefully that gives a few thoughts, but maybe next week we can definitely talk some more about that.
Thank you. The next question, we've combined really two questions that are saying the same thing in a way. One of the questions is, our kids sometimes feel like we're trying to improve them all the time. They see it as criticism. How do we balance with loving them for who they are right now and guiding them in the right direction? One of the parents are saying at the same time that how do we hide our disappointment? It's natural as a parent, we're human, to feel disappointed when our kids are in trouble. Like I never imagined my child would be in trouble or get brought home by the police or anything. So you have this task of being a good parent, but you're also like slammed with something you didn't think would ever happen in your home or to you. And you did try really hard to do a good job is what they're saying.
Absolutely. Well, first, maybe the first concept to share is that you may have noticed that in speaking about the whole process of parenting, the idea we want to look at is that of being a gardener, not a sculptor. So we have a lot of sort of the behavioralist model of raising children is more of a sculptor model. So you have your clay and you're going to sculpt it into what you want. So you got to cut off a little bit of this and point it in this direction and force it to go this way. Whereas the idea of being a gardener would be to provide sun, to provide the right conditions, and then the child will emerge. So of course, I'm not saying that we don't provide guidance, we don't provide direction, we don't have lots and lots of conversations about what's right and what's wrong and where we go and what we do. But we also have to step back at a certain point and allow that child to be who they are, and to maybe work through, do our own emotional work to find out why we're so stuck on the child being one way or another. You know, there's also a real trend right now to share all of our feelings with our children, you know, to be able to say to them, well, I'm feeling like this, and, you know, and kind of expect them to understand and respond. And it's normal, it's human. But if we are going to have that caring alpha role, if we are going to be the one that's in charge in our homes, that's setting the environment, Abdul Baha says that we have the responsibility to create the environment for our children to grow. So that doesn't mean we talk to them about every step along the way. That means we're the ones, you know, in consultation with our partners, if we have them, to set that environment, to set the rules. And then when there's disappointments, when there's difficulty, we talk to an adult about that. You know, we have to do our own work behind the scenes. Our children don't need to be a part of all of that. So there will be disappointments. Absolutely. Our children aren't going to turn out to be exactly what we thought. But we don't want to convey that to them. They need to feel from us that they have our absolute love and care and compassion. And, you know, one thing that it was kind of hard when I heard it, but it made a lot of sense, was this idea that we give to our children and then they give to their children. we don't really get a lot back from our children. But the idea is that we fill them up. We give them so much love and care that they will then go on to care for the next generation. So if we're turning to our children for, you know, for them to tell us we did a good job or to encourage us, I think we need to go somewhere else and work on that. But that's not to say that we don't guide them. I'm definitely clear on that. We have to guide a lot, but just for our own emotional health and security and encouragement, we need to find our partner or our other adult friends.
Thank you. And we only have 1 more minute, so I just can quickly maybe get this in. I don't know if you'll be able to answer, do you want to delay it till next week? But the question here is, when we're terribly disappointed in something that our child has done, we don't feel like we can give the right answer. How do you feel about passing that responsibility, at least in a temporary, to someone else?
I guess it depends on the context. You know, once we come into a child's life as their primary caregiver, that job's never gone. We have to continue on with that. So it's a very important, serious role. If we find that certain people might be able to work with them better in one way or another, or help them along in a certain aspect of their life, I think that's fine. But nobody ever takes the position of that special role of being their parent.
He's texting, if I'm so mad that I know I'm not going to be capable of handling in the spirit you're talking about, I'm more likely to threaten and try to scare them into listening and
this
grow
is
up.
really important. Yeah. You know, we have this idea, and this is kind of a behavioralist concept, that we have to correct children right away in the moment when it happens. And the research shows that actually that's not true. What's more important is to do the work when you're in right relationship with your child. So it's not like they're going to forget that they did something wrong 2 days later. And you can say very clearly to them, you know, I can't speak about this right now. We're going to have a big conversation about it, you know, at this time, maybe it's 2 days from now, whatever. But we don't have to always handle it in the moment. And in fact, it's better not to, because we often have kind of lost our prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain that helps us to be calm and see the future consequences and all these things when we're so triggered by, you know, these emotions and things. So it's often better to take a moment and to wait until you're both feeling connected and together, and then deal with the repercussions and consequences.